myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Good morning, and I'm joined by two legends that are Supermac and Gibbo. How are you, lads?
Good morning, fellas.
Good morning, chaps.
All good and all ship-shape, and the season is over. And Newcastle United finished 11th place in the table. Wow. Back in October, I don't think we would have thought that would have ended. And it's quite remarkable, Malcolm. We'll be doing the season review next week, but quite remarkable place to finish, isn't it? When you look at across the whole spectrum of the season.
I think that the latter part of last year, sort of October time, we had all just given up, hadn't we? That it was just. Relegation becoming a reality week by week. The team was playing so badly, and there seemed to be no care nor worry coming from Steve Bruce, and the players were at the time, if you remember, they were complaining that they weren't fit enough, that they wanted more training, that they wanted less days off, to me the whole thing was just in utter turmoil, and I couldn't see how on earth it could turn itself around. But of course the takeover just changed everything so quickly, and well done to the players because they responded fantastically, and just going back to the Arsenal game, the last home game of the season, I had never heard such noise and experienced such atmosphere as was created during that game, and you could see it was driving the players on, and so we've gone from utter misery to the most incredible atmosphere in the stadium in such a short space of time. And it is a short space of time in footballing terms to turn it around in that fashion. And so it hopefully that's 14 years of Ashley Rule that we can put well and truly behind us and forget all about it and know that nothing like that is ever going to happen again.
Gibbo, quite remarkable finish, mate. I mean, the 2-1 win down at Burnley. I've got to be honest, I said to you before we came on camera, Newcastle didn't really have to get out the first gear to beat Burnley, and it wasn't comprehensive, it wasn't exciting. Callum Wilson, 2 goals, which hopefully puts us in good, a good spell for next year, a great season next season. No injuries, maybe he's another strike partner alongside him, and just it bodes well.
It's fantastic, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, Malcolm was saying in his right, come October, we were thinking we're dead in the water. The amazing thing was that for the first 14 games, game by game, we went without a win. We were absolutely convinced this was it. And when we got the win against Burnley 1-0, we went another 5 league games without a win. So we had about 1 win in 19. I mean, I remember sitting next to the man in the middle there at St James's Park when we played Cambridge in the Cup and got deservedly turned over by a 3rd division side. And we were second bottom of the league. And this is in January. Yes, Eddie Howe was here. Yes, Trippier was here. But we were still doing the January buys. We were still organising, or Eddie was still organising the side and getting morale and the togetherness there. So the actual window of opportunity has been so small, it's a matter of weeks, not months, it's a matter of weeks where everything was turned around to such an extent that in 2022 we ended up as the 4th best side in the whole of the Premier League after Manchester City, Liverpool and Spurs, who are all in the Champions League next season, we got together the most points in the Premier League. We were the 4th best side in the Premier League in 2022, having been arguably the worst side, even with the Norwich and Watfords around, the worst side in the first half of the season. Now, that transformation is phenomenal. And as we know, it's a record in the history. There's that sort of rising from a bed of nails hasn't happened. And it's quite phenomenal. And it's why I was advocating Eddie Howe to be manager of the year. We know he didn't get it. I did say in the articles in the Chronicle that prior to the voting that I thought Klopp was number 1 and Pep was number 2 in the national way of looking at things. But I believe what Howe had done in such a short space of time was even better than that. Yes, it turned out the way it did with Klopp, and it's hard to argue. I mean, if he wins against Real Madrid, he's won 3 cups and finished second in the Premier League with only 2 defeats, which is 1 less than Man City had. So it's hard to argue against Klopp. But if you're looking not to make the award repetitive, I thought Eddie Howe come into it. Certainly, from any Geordie's point of view, Eddie Howe's the greatest manager we've had since we had the real great managers, Robson, Keegan and Joe Harvey.
Okay, Alan Little asks a question, and this is one we covered a little bit last night with the lads on Geordie's here, Geordie's there. What did you make, Malcolm, of the disrespect shown towards one of our players, Miggy Almiron, by Jack Grealish the other day? It looked as if he was a little worse for wear, but he repeated his name twice and was just quite derogatory.
What did he actually say? I missed this.
He said, what he said, Malcolm, was he said that, and obviously he'd had far too many sherbets, and that's not an excuse for what he said. If you've had a lot of sherbets, just keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything at all.
Don't get in front of a camera, that's for sure.
You don't have to do it. He said that Mahrez, he was trying to be funny, obviously, about Mahrez, who was with him, his teammate. And he said he deserved to be brought off in the last game because he was playing worse than Almiron. Well, to do that with a fellow pro in front of the cameras is a horrendous disrespect. And it's typical of Jack Grealish, who I loved in his last season at Villa, but he ought to look at himself. He's talking about Mahrez might be sent off. How many goals might be pulled off, hauled off because he's not playing well? How many goals has he scored this season? And Jack Grealish, for 100 million, hasn't had a great season at Man City whatsoever. He owes them a season next season. So if I was him, I would have either kept the top on the bottle of booze, or if I'd knocked the top off the bottle of booze, I would have kept my mouth shut when I wasn't drinking. I certainly wouldn't have combined the both. It was horrendously unprofessional. Whatever anybody might think, if Miggy's performances and whether there isn't any end product, etc. For a fella pro who is not the greatest pro in the world, I might add, to have a go in front of cameras and on the record was just awful. I mean, a lot of people make that mistake when they celebrate. I always remember, can you remember, guys, when England beat Australia in the tests to win the Ashes and everybody got on the coach round London and Freddie Flintoff was giving it 16 out of 10 and saying a lot of daft things. It happens, but try to make certain it doesn't happen with you, because if he's not squirming right now, he ought to be.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, and hopefully he hangs his head in shame and apologises to him at least at some point in the near future. You could have knocked me down with a feather yesterday, Malcolm. Kieran Trippier was picked for England.
Indeed.
Longstaff. Why is that coming up? Kieran Trippier. Where is he? I'll have to sort that out.
It's Sean Longstaff.
Well, we'll talk about that as well. But Kieran Trippier is
Sean didn't get in the England squad, did he, as well?
No, definitely not. Yeah. What did you make of that? Because, I mean, the guy's come in, he had a massive effect in those early games, and then was hit with an injury. We all know what an influence he's been away from away from the team. He's been in the dressing room. He's been on those infamous photographs. And then, of course, I think we all picked him out at the Arsenal game where he was cajoling and coaching and standing more or less for the entire game down by the touchline, encouraging his teammates. He's had such a massive effect in the dressing room. I don't think it's a huge surprise, but it's just that, Gareth Southgate didn't seem to see south of the Watford Gap. North of the Watford Gap.
And yes, I know what you mean. But I personally, looking around, I think that without any shadow of a doubt, Trippier is the best English right back. Congratulations! Yes, we got the right fella this time. Not only does he keep his game brilliantly simple and very effective, but he is invaluable in the way that he's coaching people all the time out on the pitch. From the first moment that he went out in St James's Park, he was talking to people, and he would give them a very short instruction while the play was going on. Give the short instruction, but as soon as the ball went out of play, he'd go over and he would explain in detail what the short instruction was all about. And so it wasn't just bossing people, it was actually helping them to see things better and to understand things better out in the football field. And I absolutely love the way that he goes about it. And there aren't many who are, if you like, coaches as players. But Trippier, that's what he's doing. And it's a great thing for a manager when you've got somebody like Trippier out on the pitch, particularly when it's on the far side to the dugout, because he's getting on with a game where the manager's instruction can't carry all the way over there, and you can see there was that one time at Burnley where Trippier, he's come across and he's talking to Eddie Howe and the coaches, and Eddie Howe was listening intensely to what he had to say. The respect that Eddie Howe showed Trippier at that little moment in time was immense for me. That Trippier is so valued, not for his playing skills, but separately for what he can actually do to improve not only the side, but also individual players around him. And plus the fact that I love watching him as a right back, because he's all the time looking to get things turned in Newcastle's favour, and he takes little liberties, but he knows he's got the pace to recover should it go wrong, and it very rarely does go wrong. I thoroughly enjoy watching him.
I think the interesting thing, and I take what you were meaning, Steve, that he's been out for so long, and before Burnley, he hadn't started for us, and he's back in the England side. Two things, I think, with that, and one is that Southgate appreciates what he does in the dressing room and on the training pitch as he's come back into the squad, because he's been a very valued member of Gareth Southgate's squad. I'm pretty certain that Southgate will, prior to Burnley, have talked to Eddie Howe and to Kieran Trippier about, I'm about to pick him, what is his situation physically, etc., etc. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if that played a major part in Eddie Howe starting him at Burnley, because he could do with a full 90 minutes if he's going to be picked by England, because under normal circumstances, Kraft has been so surprisingly good. You could have gone with him at Burnley and just left Trippier in cotton wool for next season. But if he's going to take part in these England matches, he needed to stretch his legs and make certain he could do it. And Gareth Southgate needed to see that. Trippier needed to know that. And I'm certain that played a part in his selection at Burnley. And he came through that exceptionally well. He has got a challenge at right back with England because of Kyle Walker's scorching pace, searing pace. Trippier is anything but one pace. But Walker puts on the burners like Usain Bolt at times. But it is good for England that is back. It's fabulous for Trippier, and it's good for Newcastle to have a current England player because, it always in the past, we signed players that had played for England, including Callum Wilson, of course, but not players who were currently playing for England. It's good to have Trippier in the England side. It's thoroughly deserved. And with hindsight, which is a wonderful thing, I think it dovetails him playing at Burnley, but to the fact that he came through that and immediately was in the England squad. And I think they were linked. But I do know that Gareth Southgate thinks as highly of him as Eddie Howe does. But anybody that's worked, Simone did it at Atletico Madrid, which is one of the reasons that they helped him get a club back in England because he wanted to come back for the family, etc. And Simone thought so much of him. He's a great pro, the sort managers love, and he is reaping the reward at club and country level. And good on him. He would
yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more, John. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned was that when he first got injured, he was travelling with the side to away
on crutches. On crutches.
On crutches, because he could be a very valuable asset in helping players to be better organised out in the field. And you can imagine that he'll walk into a coaching post as soon as he decides to hang his boots up, whether it be at Newcastle or elsewhere, because his reputation, I think, is there for all to see.
Yeah, fantastic though. Look forward to seeing that. And let's hope he taps a few players up, lads, while he's there, and says, "Get yourself to Newcastle. It's good crack."
Well, I think he's already tapping a few players up because the Atletico Madrid left back has been strongly linked with coming to Newcastle, as you probably know. Lodi, who's the Brazilian that plays left back at Atletico Madrid, and I think both him and Bruno knows him because of his calls frequently into the Brazilian squad, and Trippier knows him. So I think there's already strings being pulled behind the scenes, and there's bound to be this summer, and long may we have it.
Okay, so if that's the case, John, it would appear then that Target will return to Aston Villa.
Yes, I believe he will. There's always the possibility, Malcolm, that if your number one target, forgive the pun, which could be Lodi, doesn't come off, then you go and get your number two guy. So there's always that possibility. The feeling with Newcastle, and I did mention this on this podcast a few weeks before the season ended, was that Target was big-hearted, he was honest, he was a superb defender, etc., etc., etc. But there was a feeling that they could just get a little more out of a left back who was good when he crossed the halfway line, a little more adventuresome. You look at the ultimate with the two Liverpool fullbacks. I mean, you're not going to quite get that out of other people, but there was the feeling that if you're going for the ultimate, that there are left backs who will give that little bit more in terms of attacking ability. And this guy who plays for Atletico Madrid, who was a good friend of Bruno and of Kieran Trippier, I think he's got the same agent as Bruno. There's talk that is the guy we will be going for as number one choice. So at this moment, I would think Target is not top of the left back list, but is still on the left back list.
Okay, but you can understand why he's not top of the list.
Yeah.
For one, as you rightly said, John, that he doesn't get over the halfway line and do enough in the opposing half. But also, there was one thing that really quite scared me about him, and it was against Liverpool, and he was caught more to the centre of the defence, and the ball was played in behind him, and I think it was Mo Salah who just went like a bat out of hell, and Target, it looked as if he was running backwards. You know, so when you're lacking as much pace as that in the Premiership, it's a concern.
And of course, the trouble is, Malcolm, I guess, and I'm putting myself in Eddie Howe's position. If you were signing Target, having given a new deal to Paul Dummett's quite similar. He's a good defender, but doesn't get over the halfway line with the vision that Trippier does or other people do. So you maybe wanting a left back that's got that little bit extra, the cherry on the cake.
Absolutely.
Crossing the halfway line. So that's the thinking at this moment regarding the left backs.
Yeah, and there's also talk about Target's missus not being too keen on a move up north, which could come into that as well. If
she'll have to get keen on a move somewhere because he ain't going to stay at Aston Villa.
I think she prefers Harrods over Phoenix. I think that could be the main sticking point. We'll wait and see what happens on that. There was an interesting one last night. John, I'll come to you first. Stu Penman, who does Geordie's here, Geordie's there, get some tidbits, of course, out in the Middle East every now and then. And he suggested Dan Ashworth could be done this week. He could arrive at Newcastle United this week. If that is the case, how important is that going to be to Newcastle's recruitment over this summer?
It's going to be very important to this club whenever it is. And ideally, this is the time for him to come in at the beginning of a window like this. There's absolutely no question that this is his destination. That's why he left Brentford on gardening leave. There's absolutely no question that he is coming here. Newcastle are very conscious of being taken for a ride financially over everything they touch because money, reputation goes before them. And they're equally determined that they're not going to allow that to happen because they would make a rod for their own back in the future, which is why they've stuck rigidly to what's happened with Brighton and saying, right, we're not going to pay exorbitantly, even though we could, because it would not do our reputation and it's not the way we want to do business. Nevertheless, they're working very hard behind the scenes daily with Brighton to try to bring this to an end. I mean, this guy was sent on gardening leave. He must have a nicer gardening capability. Brown, who started off up here before he went away south instead. Everybody's garden. He must have a garden. He'll be on the grid having visits to his garden for a fiver. He must have the best garden there is at the moment because he's been doing that for about 6 months. And it's very important he comes in. And it's very important he comes in as quick as he can. I'm not naive, and I'm not saying this happens, but I suggest that there might be the odd phone call going into him anyway. And in some of his feelings will already be filtering into the club about what we should do or not do this summer. And perhaps just when he's finished his gardening and he takes off his gardening gloves, he picks up the phone and phones a couple of players and said, would you like coming up? I know a club that's somewhere up near the town and you might fancy a move up there. I'm certain that he's being used in some shape or form. None of us are naive. Football is football and business is business. But yes, as soon as we can get it, it's a much better ball game when he's in place, as it is with all the other things that are going to be in place. It's a much better ball game when we get the training ground sorted out, when we get the sponsorship deals sorted out, when we get the new signings sorted out. Yeah, every step is a step forward, and there's a lot of steps still to go, naturally. We'll forget the short space of time that Amanda and the guys have been here.
Yeah.
It's such a short space of time. And it's natural, it's human instinct for we want things to happen, not tomorrow, not today, but yesterday. And it can't happen that quick. It's impossible. But we're going along nicely, and I'm certain the Ashworth will be in as soon as it's possible. And if it's possible next week, it will be next week.
Yeah, Malcolm, it's important, I think, for supporters of all ages just to remember that, that Rome wasn't built in a day, and that John's just highlighted there, new players coming in. Training ground needs to be updated. We need a new sponsor. We need, we need to do this. We need to do that. It's only the 7th of October last year that this takeover went through, and the guys really who've done so well so far, we know they've got a lot of work to do, but sit back, enjoy it, and just let them get on with their job, because we can't change anything as supporters. All we can do is do what we do best, go support the team, give them our backing, put our money across the turnstiles, in the shops, whatever. But we've just got to sit back and enjoy it and be patient, I think, is the message, we should be passing on when we do a platform on a show like this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Steve, that as John rightly said, and you said, that a huge amount has happened in the few months that since the takeover was finalised. There's going to have to be a lull at some point in this. It can't all keep rushing along at 90 miles an hour, and plus the fact it takes time. It takes that bit of time to, when you're bringing in a lot of new faces, just to get the side completely organised and doing the correct job out in the field. It doesn't happen all at once. If you're bringing in a lot of players, if you're only bringing in one, maybe two, then yes, it can happen quite quickly. But when you're getting a lot of new faces, new bodies into the side, and well, how many changes are there going to be in this summer? I can see maybe half a dozen new players coming in, and that's over half a team, for heaven's sake. And always you have to make space for them. So it's going to be a very busy summer. By heavens, it is at St James Park, because there's an awful lot of players who need to be moved on, and otherwise you're just overloading the whole situation. So few in, few out, absolutely imperative, and then you have to allow all of the changes to settle down and get themselves organised and going. I always remember when I first signed for Newcastle, there was myself, Terry Hibbett, Paddy Howard. So there were 3 new faces. That's a third of the team almost. And it took us a couple of games just to work it all out, as to how we played together and what we were looking for and what to look for, what not to look for, and so on and so forth. Because games are always different to training, and by the third game we got it right. Well, if that's just with 3 new faces, if you've got half a dozen new faces, it's going to take quite a little while to get it all sorted and underway.
Yeah, big shout out as always to our sponsors, Spider Miner, worldwide coverage from the lads. It's the only cryptocurrency miner that can mine 5 different cryptocurrencies at the same time whilst using virtually no energy, and it's VPN protected. Buy yours now at www.miner.spidervpn.org. Thanks to Nathan and to Gareth. Thanks to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 01913897245. And to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com, and to Click-Eye. Meet the new Game Over screen drop into a ClearRun device near you, available on Apple Store, Google Play, and at clearrun.game. Thanks to Neil Jackson from Media Arts for help with all the video content. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can subscribe for free over the summer. We are still doing 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans. We've recently hit 48,100 subscribers, edging our way closer to that 50,000 mark. Thank you as well to iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean, who have our podcast on there. So if you're out and about and you miss us on YouTube, you can usually hear that 24 hours after the show has been broadcast. If you want to become a member, click join on YouTube, and it is very simple to do that. And if you do subscribe and join, and you will get a free car sticker. Just contact John at NUFCmatters.com to claim yours today. Don't forget as well, we do support the food bank. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is the place to go and make a virtual donation throughout the summer at the Matchday Bucket. Our end of season do hedges closer, and it is Mick Lowes and Andy Griffin with the entertainment on Friday the 24th of June at Shearer's Bar, St James's Park. Tickets are £12 and available now from NUFCmatters.com. Don't forget as well, the Shearer Ball raffle is still ongoing, $2.99 a ticket. And now at NUFCmatters.com. And a couple of other things. I am doing a little fundraiser at the Irish Club for the St Bede's Palliative Care Unit, who looked after me mum in her final days. Richard, the director, has kindly agreed to come up and do a screening of my documentary, The Crazed Gangsters Behind Bars. So tickets for that are a £5. All proceeds going to the Palliative Care Unit at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. That is at 12 o'clock on the 11th of June. Tickets available from NUFCmatters.com. And don't forget, I do a little bit of something different on the channel. And this is quite a remarkable story. The Devil, the Diary of an Addict with Gavin Dixon. He's a Northeast lad who went onto a reality TV programme 20 years ago, and it changed his life forever, and not for the best. He ended up addicted to drugs, cocaine, crack cocaine, and was very close to death until his mother's intervention. I'm happy to say that Gavin is fitting well and back to his best these days. But this is a harrowing story, and if this doesn't put anybody off, the temptation of taking Class A drugs, I don't know what will. But that will be premiering on Saturday on the channel. Keep an eye out for that. Okay, a lot of questions coming in from the guys and girls on the chat. This is a good one, so we'll go with this. Somebody says, do you think, Malcolm, we would have stayed up if Steve Bruce was still in charge? And even if we had the takeover, do you still think players like Bruno and Trippier would have come to play under Steve Bruce? Now, this is interesting because Steve Bruce, once again, had a microphone put in his face this week and basically came out and said that he would hope that in the future Newcastle fans would look back on his time at Newcastle and say, well, Brucey didn't do too bad a job. And he also had a pop in a roundabout way at the fact that Eddie Howe had been backed financially whilst he hadn't, and that he had the harder job working for Mike Ashley. What's your thoughts on all of that, Mal?
Well, he decided to take the job under Mike Ashley. And Mike Ashley would have set out what the terms were, and make no mistake, Steve Bruce walked away a much richer man at the end of it. And he was there to basically do it as Mike Ashley wanted, which he did, and to the chagrin of the players, they finished up complaining that they weren't training enough, they weren't fit enough to go and play the game. That's sheer unprofessional by manager and coaches to allow players to go like that. That's the biggest no-no ever in the game. And I think that we can see, and this is what Steve Bruce can't see, that the difference between his management style and Eddie Howe's is so vast that Eddie Howe, he has a hugely fit side, well organised, well drilled, and they're enjoying it. You can see them all. They're all having a great time. They're absolutely loving it. And under Steve Bruce, it was quite the reverse. And so Eddie Howe, he's come to create a very successful side for Newcastle United. Was that ever the intention of Steve Bruce? No, it wasn't. He had a plan in mind that was all about him, and whatever mess he left Newcastle United in, so what? As long as Steve Bruce walked away with what he wanted.
I think
Don, it's crazy to think that he's still living in a bit of a world of delusion. Steve Bruce,
Yeah.
Newcastle fans didn't want him in the first place.
No. I mean, the bottom line is the question that was asked originally was, would Newcastle have stayed up if Bruce had stayed? The answer is emphatically no, and history told us that, because if you went 14 games at the start of a season without a victory, no side, and I mean no side, had ever stayed up. Now, do we think Steve Bruce would have reversed that and kept Newcastle up? And what we've also got to remember is that it was the deadly duo, wasn't it? It was Batman and Robin. If we're talking about Steve Bruce, we're also talking about Mike Ashley. And the two together would not have kept Newcastle up this particular season, having got off. Yes, they kept us up in two previous seasons, but we were talking then about staying up. We've only been talking about staying up this season because we're in such a big mess when everything changed. We will not be talking about staying up next season. And I think the combination of new owners getting Ashley out and then choosing correctly in the managerial stage, which was quite courageous and quite good. They went for a young manager with great ambition, great hunger, wishing to prove himself rather than trying to get an automatic big name like Mourinho or whatever, and then finding it doesn't work. And as for would Bruno and Trippier have signed for Newcastle, I think the answer is absolutely no. Ashley would not have gone for them to start with because they would have cost money. And secondly, they bought into the vision Newcastle United had when they were approached, a vision which they could clearly see which way Newcastle were going, and it was only upwards. And they had the courage, Trippier in particular early doors, had the courage to buy in as the first one to buy in and saying, yes, I believe this is going to happen. I believe takeoff will happen, and I'm willing to come here. Bruno quickly got the same scent and come in. They came because they could see in Eddie Howe, who Trippier had already worked with at Burnley, remember, he took him to Burnley. With Eddie Howe and with the new owners, they could see liftoff. If Bruce had come along with Ashley, they would not have seen liftoff, and no, they wouldn't have come here. It's just a fact of life that it's the way it's been. And, you know, Steve this week fell into the old, and perhaps it's predictable, he fell into the old case, didn't he, of suggesting perhaps that Newcastle have only stayed up because Eddie Howe had some money to spend in January. I'm sick of hearing that, because sometimes it's good decisions. It's not money that does well. The board picking Eddie Howe instead of somebody else to be manager, that wasn't driven by them having loads of cash. That was driven by them having been astute enough to get the right manager. Okay, we got Trippier in, and we got Byrne in, and we got Bruno in. But would Steve Bruce have resided over switching Joe Linton from an inept number 9 to a top-class midfielder capable of getting Player of the Year? Would he have got the best out of Kraft like Eddie Howe and his coaches have? Would he have got a different body language out of Fraser, who looked, when he was here under Bushy, as if he had totally disinterested, and then suddenly he's buzzing around like a little bee for when he's playing for Newcastle in the new regime? Would he have been able to do all that? And the answer is no, because there was no signs of it. And that wasn't money orientated. Money didn't make Joe Linton a better player, didn't make Cruyff a better player, or Fraser. That was done on the training ground, and that wasn't about cash. Money didn't get us Eddie Howe because he wasn't the top name like Mourinho, or for that matter, like Gerrard and Lampard, who were in the marketplace. It wasn't all about money. Money always comes into every club, but it wasn't about money. The attitude, the thing that startled me was the improvement in very modest players. That startled me as much as Trippier playing well and Bruno playing well and Byrne playing well. Was seeing the change. Shaw, who I haven't mentioned, was a walking mistake to me. And then all of a sudden, he's looking the quality man who's comfortable on the ball. It wasn't about money, Steve. It was about good coaching. It was about organisation. It was about getting players to believe in you so much they could come out the shell. It's about seeing Joe Linton not as a number 9 who can't score goals, but as a midfield player and having the courage to do that. I think a lot of things come into it. And without the change of ownership and manager, we might well have been decided to go down instead of Burnley on the last day.
I think for sure, John, that we would have done. Steve Bruce is now at his 12th club in his management career, West Brom. So 12 clubs in 23 years he's been managing. So that means that he has spent less than 2 years at each of the clubs that he's been with. You know, there's no longevity to the man. Oh, he's just got one bit of length of stay, and that was when he was manager of Birmingham. He was there for 6 years. But all the others, he was there for less than a year. He was there for 16 months. He was there for 14 months, you know. So there's a pattern all the way through those years that there is no longevity about the man whatsoever. Look at Eddie Howe, and we know that this is a hell of a ride that's going to go on for a number of seasons because he's got that in him. Steve Bruce hasn't.
No, definitely not. Big thank you to Vince Smith for bidding £200 on the Anton Deck NUFC Fans Food Bank t-shirt. Don't forget you can still bid for that up until Friday night at 6:30. Do you think Elliot Anderson will get a run out, says Ian Malcolm? Or do you think he'll get loaned out? I mean, a lot of buzz around him. Joey Barton and the Bristol Rovers fans seem to love him, hold him in high esteem. It's a completely different level at the Premier League. We know that. But if you're old enough, if you're good enough, you're old enough, Mal.
Yeah. But Newcastle have a record over the past few years of never being able to make that decision of sticking somebody into the first team and saying, right, let's give him a number of games to prove himself or not. So they have the tendency to say, oh, well, let's loan him out and see if he can prove himself somewhere else. And I think he certainly proved himself so far with what he's done at Bristol Rovers this past season. But there's quite a gap between the levels between Bristol Rovers and Newcastle. Albeit there is only one way to find out, and that is to stick him in the side. But now, and here's a problem, because Callum Wilson is obviously going to be there. Would they put Elliot Anderson in? No, because the manager has already stated that his way of playing is one up front, not two, one up front. And so that restricts young forwards from coming through. So and we know Callum Wilson will get injured. You've got the experienced Wood who's not got a good track record with us, or you've got the untried Elliot Anderson. Who do you go with?
I think Elliot Anderson will be, I suspect, given a chance pre-season by playing in a few of the first team friendlies pre-season, see how he does. If I had to put my money down, I think they would probably give him one more season, or at least 6 months off a season in the Championship before making the final decision on when to bring him in. This is a different regime to the regime we've had in the past. There'll be different thinking from Eddie Howe and the board to the way they used to, with the caution over kids, which Malcolm's gone on about and is absolutely correct. Elliot Anderson will come in as an attacking midfield player, though, not as an out-and-out striker. So he could play behind Wilson quite comfortably. Whether he does Willock's sort of position, whether he does at this stage, or whether they say, look, he did terrific in League Two, let's do terrific in the Championship, then come and join us, might also depend on who we get in midfield, because we've signed Longstaff, we've got Shelby, unless we let him go, we've got Willock, we've got Bruno. What's the opportunity going to be? Would he be better playing week in, week out in the Championship, at least until Christmas, and then come back to us? I think he's a bloke with a real future, and hopefully that future will be at Newcastle, and I think it will be. Whether they make him do the huge jump from League Two to the Premier League in an ambitious Premier League side, I'm not certain. I think Joey Barton didn't do him a lot of favours by calling him, what did he call him, the Geordie Maradona? I think that's a hell of a label to put on a kid before he starts his career. But I know he was trying to be kind and wonderful, and that was for consumption in Bristol rather than for consumption up here. But you talk about making the bar so high, you need to pole vault over it, not jump over it. But there we are. I think we might see him go out on loan before we see him regular first team. And unless he's going to get good chances at the beginning of a new season, he's better off on loan, playing at least till Christmas every week, than getting sort of Dwight Gale's 3 minutes at the end of a game regularly in the first half of the season. And will he automatically jump ahead of Sean Longstaff? I'm not saying should he. I mean, will he, in Eddie's mind, who's just signed a 3-year contract, will he jump ahead of Bruno? Of course not. Will he jump ahead of Willock at 20 million? Will he jump ahead of Shelby? Interesting. I think he's got a great future. Whether it's now or 6 months' time is what we'll find out after he's been tried pre-season.
Tom Dixon asking the question about one of our players who has just signed a contract, and let's see whether I can maybe get the right photo up this time. Sean Longstaff, of course, has signed a new. He's extended his stay at Newcastle. We were speaking about it a couple of weeks ago. Would he stay? Would he go? And Tom just wants to know what your thoughts are on him signing a new 3-year deal at the club.
I think it's lovely that Eddie Howe has shown the faith in him to tell the club to give him a new contract. I think that Eddie Howe, he's very astute. He doesn't miss a trick. And I think that he has seen why Sean Longstaff can 1 week be out of things and having a poor game, and then the next week can really look a super player. And that is, it's whether Shelby is playing or not. If you watch carefully, Shelby ignores Sean Longstaff and will go and play with other people. He'll turn his back. He did it with both Sean Longstaff and he did it with Matty Longstaff as well, when Matty last played. Shelby can be a moody so-and-so. He really can. And for some reason, he's got a dislike for the Longstaffs. And I would think that Sean Longstaff, when asked to play in midfield with Shelby, instead of being really lively and bubbly and great, I'm in the side. it would be of a flat nature. And so I just have a feeling that Shelby could be on his way this summer, and that is why they've given Sean Longstaff a new 3-year contract. But if they expect Sean Longstaff to be there in the side with Shelby constantly ignoring him, turning his back, going the other way, then they would. It's a waste of 3 years for the lad.
Yeah, John, I've got to be honest, I picked him out as my man of the match at the weekend. Dubravka was good, as well, but Sean Longstaff, he had a great game, and he's had a good end of the season.
I was going to say, that's the point that you're making, Steve, is that he's had a very strong end to the season. I thought he was excellent against Arsenal in the vision on the dinked ball for the second goal against Arsenal, the one Bruno scored after it came off the keeper, was phenomenal. And I thought he was terrific at Burnley. He's had a very strong end to the season. I think, like every player, he'll play on confidence. And I think at one stage earlier this season, his confidence was very, very low. And it's now much, much higher, and has deserved his opportunity to stay in the squad. And he's certainly more of the future of Newcastle United than, say, Shelby is, both at his age and the way Shelby plays. He is more the future of Newcastle United than him. So, yes, I think it's going to be interesting, that midfield, because we've talked about who Newcastle want this summer, and they want a goalkeeper, they want a centre-half, they want a left-back, they want a centre midfielder, a centre-forward and a winger, left or right. So, as Malcolm says, that's sort of half a team. And I know we're talking about the squad not necessarily all starting together in the first team. But if you put another signing into that centre midfield, where at this moment you've got Bruno, Shelby, Willock, Longstaff, there's going to be Elliot Anderson. There's going to be an awful lot of bodies here, so people have got to go out.
What about you missed Almiron?
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
So
have you given him a transfer?
To be truthful, I think
transfer already, John.
Almiron's going to sign for Manchester City on the recommendation of Jack Grealish. So I realise he's gone.
You little tinker, John.
I am a tinker. I like setting the old rumours going.
Quickly, John, just before we finish, just want to know any news on potential pre-season club warm-ups, fixtures yet? Sefton Mag's asking the question. I mean, obviously Newcastle dropped in it from a great height with a couple of other Premier League clubs by the tour organisers in America.
Yes.
We need a pre-season, John. Are we any closer to getting one?
Very, very much so. And I was talking to somebody just in the last few days up at St. James's Park and saying what a shame it is about America, etc., etc. And they said, yes, devastated, etc. And I said, what now? We said, well, we're going for a tour. It will not be long haul, which means America or Australia or Asia. It's much more likely to be Europe. So we've just got to wait and see. They've got to get it. They've got to get it quick because, blimey, beginning of August, we're on their way again. So
6th of August.
They've got to get it quick. But at the time I was speaking to this person, they were saying long haul's been snookered. It looks as if it's going to be Europe.
Whitley Bay. Now wrong, we're running on them sand dunes.
We'll play North Shields, Whitley Bay. Cocky Leaky Juniors will come down from Scotland to play in a three-way tournament.
Get up that hill like they used to behind Gateshead Stadium in the 80s.
Oh, absolutely. And up the sand dunes at the coast, running up the sand. How do you think Bob Moncur and them had those big thighs? And the player sitting in between us. If you run up those sand hills, that's how you end up, mate.
That's how them trousers used to split at Malcolm's shop.
Steve, what they used to do was take us in a coach 12 miles north of Bamborough, kick us off the coach and say, the coach will meet you at Bamborough Castle. And it was just left to us to run on the beach, some 12 miles to Bamburgh Castle. And when we got there, Keith Birkinshaw, he said, "You see that dune? I want you to get to the top of there 10 times." You've never seen so many players fainting in all your life.
I love it. Well, we're going to get more stories like this in a couple of weeks' time when Malcolm and John start the review of Malcolm's time at Newcastle season by season. Next week, we're going to be doing the season review throughout all of the shows next week. So everybody will have a chance to pick their favourite player, best game, best goal, etc. So we'll be doing that next week. Don't forget, I am back tomorrow night, 5 o'clock. It's the famous 5 amigos tomorrow, and me and Steve Hasty and Mitch will be joined by Keith Patterson and Ian Mearns. So 5 of us on tomorrow night should be quite a hoot. Always a good laugh, the amigos. Plenty to talk about. As always, looking forward to being joined by the lads. Lads, been an absolute pleasure as always, and I hope you both have a good week and looking forward for your season review next week. Take care, lads.
Take care, guys.
Take care, everyone.